Hello, my name is Jamie, and welcome to the second part of the velociraptor modelling tutorial. Today we will be focusing on modelling in the arms and the legs, and getting in the details of the feet, the toes, the hands and the fingers, and getting the claws all modelled in as well. So make sure to hit like if you're enjoying the videos, and subscribe if you want to see more later on. And let's get right into it. So, with the velociraptor, we've got a little bit of detail, but not much to work with in order to get the arms and the legs actually coming out of the model. So what we're going to need to actually do is add in a little bit more geometry as we're working to make sure that we've got polygons where we need them. What we will be actually doing is creating two what I call shoulder joints out of the geometry that we'll be working with. So on the velociraptor, we want to create basically a shoulder joint. And to do that, we need to add in a little bit of extra geometry. So where we want to extrude out from, we want to make sure it's sort of surrounded by a couple of edges. I think we'll do the leg first, because it's bigger and it's sort of easier to see what's going on. So I'm going to select this edge loop here, and I might actually slide it back. So I'm going to press G twice, and that activates edge slide mode. And that makes the vertices travel along sort of the normals of the two edges that it's aligned to. So if I then go back and then it travels up, and you can see the sort of direction that it's aiming for, which is basically the direction of this edge, or when you move it in the other direction is the direction of this edge as it is before the movement happened. So it's a very handy tool just to move some vertices around. Now I'm going to add in a loop cut here. And we want to extrude out these faces. 5, 6. So we've got 6 vertices there to work with. I think that's enough to get the basic shapes in that we need. And we'll just reshape these vertices that we've just extruded out a little bit. And probably bring these ones back behind. And have the middle two vertices sort of be the most that are protruding out. The top ones we'll actually bring back a bit, the middle ones a little bit as well. We don't want the leg to stick out too far. Although, actually maybe we do, because that looks very thin. So in this instance, I'm not going to be creating a circle, as the leg is quite, in this case, is very non-circular, especially the top of the leg. The arms, we would probably can get away with that, creating a circle and then working from there, but in this case I don't think we will. But what we will do is bring this vertice in towards the center line a bit, and just sort of tidy up these vertices a little bit as well. Maybe bring this one a little bit forwards. It doesn't have to 100% match the reference, but as close as you can is usually the best. Now we will bring these out a little bit more again. The velociraptor does have big muscly legs, so that's something to think about. It's sort of its strongest point, because it's from what we see in like the Jurassic Park movies, for instance, they are very fast runners, and they leap up and they use their feet, their claws on their feet as their main weapon. So that means they have big, strong legs. So I'm not too worried about making the legs, especially the thighs, too wide out from the body. But that's a fairly good starting point. And so I will extrude down. And I'm going to extrude basically to this knee. And then I'll scale down a little bit, just to get it sort of in place. And then sort of arrange the vertices a bit more closely by hand. Check how that's looking. That's okay. Now the foot of the velociraptor is a long one, so he's actually resting on his toes here, and then the foot comes up like this, very much like a bird. And this is the ankle up here. So it's like a double jointed leg is what it ends up being more like. So we'll sort of try and get that flow to come as close as we can. So we want the angle of this to be somewhere between the angle of the leg and the angle of the foot, just so it can merge nicely between the two. We'll add in a little bit more geometry later to smooth all this out, but I think around there is looking pretty good. And then we'll extrude the foot area down. And we'll just take a look from the front view. I suspect we want to scale that up in the X, and probably this as well. And this seem quite skinny compared to what I would expect. Just to help my eyes, I'm going to add in a loop cut just here. Scale down a little bit, bring it back. Scale down a little bit more. And I think I'll add in a little loop cut just before that ankle and just adjust things as necessary. Scale down a bit to get that in there, and just that will keep the silhouette looking pretty close. We might add another loop just up here to make that, I suppose that's the calf muscle, look a bit bigger or more defined. Scale that up a bit. Beautiful. Okay. So that's a pair of legs. That's looking okay. Now the feet get a little bit tricky, but we should be able to manage with this. Now one thing we do need is basically 2 polygons facing us in order to get the 2 toes in. So these are the 2 toes here, and then there's a 3rd toe that comes out the side. So we'll extrude down, and that will allow us to create this sort of bumpy part a bit later on. So if we then were to add in more geometry, scale up, bring this down and bring this up a bit, that will create this extra bit of detail in the foot. I mean, we can just leave that like that, and then we can take a look at the foot. Now, looking at the geometry, I think it's going to be fine if we actually add in an edge loop around the whole leg. So that's going to give us down here the 2 polygons that I was looking for. And around the rest of the model, it's only just gone around the leg. Because of the way we extrude it out, it's just gone around basically where that shoulder joint is. So then we'll go to solid view and we'll just grab these polygons here, and we'll use that smooth vertices command from before. But if you don't have it on your quick menu, it is in the vertex and then smooth vertices, and it will smooth out whatever you've got selected. So that's given us a little bit more working room, and we'll just adjust things to be fairly nice and not too crazy looking. Now we've only sort of fixed up at the top of the leg, so I'll need to select the whole rest of it, and what I'll do is I'll B and then middle click to deselect all of that, and I'm just going to scale in the Y a little bit just to add a little bit of roundedness to what we've just made, what we just added. And along the front here it's actually gone quite concave, so we'll bring this out a bit, and I think even this one here as well, to make sure that the leg looks nice and rounded. I think this one needs to come out a bit more. And just make a few little adjustments to make sure it's looking quite good. It's actually looking like a horse hoof at the moment, so it's kind of a funny look. But we'll add in those big fat toes and it won't be looking too weird anymore. We might actually move so this part out to the right and this part out to the left, just so we've got 2 bigger toe-like things going forwards. And then I'll extrude once and rotate to get to about here. Maybe scale down a little bit. And then we'll just go to the top view and check how things are lining up. I want to rotate a little bit to try and get them sort of facing forwards. And then we'll do an Alt-E to extrude along individual faces, and that will give us two separate faces that we can then work with. So these will be the two different toes. Let's come out to pretty much the right spot there. Now, for a four-sided polygon is not going to create a nice rounded looking toe. So I'm actually going to add in another edge loop around the foot like this. And we'll scale up these two center polygons or center edges. They can overlap a little bit, that's not too much of an issue. And then if we scale down the two bottom, or the top and the bottoms, and that creates a nice rounded toe. We can also use the rest of this geometry to make the foot nice and rounded. Maybe scale them out a little bit. And just make use of what we've got to improve the model as much as possible. And sort of add to the shapes that we're trying to make. Now it does seem like it's sort of it's more triangular, not quite triangular, it's sort of a rounded triangle. So there's sort of all more masses at the bottom, more of the soft masses at the bottom. So it might be worth, maybe not the back edge, but these ones, maybe edge slide them down a bit and scale out. That'll give us a bit of that, bit more mass towards the bottom of the foot. You can exaggerate that as much as you want. I'm going to just leave it like that, I think, for now. Maybe bring the mass down on the toes a little bit. Something like that. And then, I want to press 1, not F1. Then we want to actually create the toes. So the toe I see as, or the end of the toe where the nail comes out of, I see as just sort of being this concave, almost just a slightly inset thing where the nail actually comes out around. So we don't have to do too much work to get that to happen. I might go to solid view in face mode. And so we just need to select these two faces basically, extrude, and then right click to cancel the transformation, scale, S to scale, and you want a nice chunky bit of flesh there, and then we'll extrude and just allow that to move back along the normal, and we'll just go in a little bit. It doesn't have to be too far, I don't think. I'm going to add in another edge loop and just slide it slightly towards the front, and that will allow, when we come to adding subsurface, that will stop this from smoothing out too much and keep it much closer around where the actual nail or the claw is coming out. So we'll select these two polygons again and do the same process. So E to extrude, right click to cancel transform, S to scale, and then E to extrude a little bit back along the normals, Control R, slide it close to the front, and that's pretty good. Now to get the claw, we do want it to come out perfectly out of this circular shape that we've made. So to do that, we'll select these two polygons. I'm going to go to side view, I guess, extrude, and it's traveling along the normal, but I don't want to go that far out. So I'll go to wireframe, extrude, and just bring it right up to sort of the edge, and then extrude out again. And just by having that edge there, that should help the claw maintain its shape, and basically it'll keep everything looking nice and connected. Now we've got these sort of claw shapes to follow in the reference. You can follow as closely as you like. This first extrusion that's coming out, I will not change the width too much, I don't think, because I don't want to affect what's going on here. So I'm going to do an S and a Z to change the height, and then an S and an X a little bit. Top. Now I think we want the top to be wider than the bottom, so the bottom I'll scale in a little bit, top I'll scale out a little bit, in the middle I'll just scale in to be sort of making it a bit more uniform. And then select everything, E to extrude, R to rotate, bring it down and scale it down quite a bit. See how that's looking? That's looking quite crooked, so we'll just rotate that back a bit. And I might scale in these quite far. Oops, just S to scale. And then I might start looking at like the bottom where I want the sharpness to be. To actually be a bit smaller. Now if I'm still worried about, I've made quite a big difference in the shape between here and here. So I might add another, what this is called a support loop, just on the outside of the nail, or the claw. And then we've got a fairly claw looking like thing right here. With minimal geometry used. We can add a bit more to help with the shape. This is not going to be a deformable part of the character, so it's not too much of an issue how much geometry is actually on it and how that geometry looks. So just sort of eyeball it and get an idea of how you think things should be looking. Make it so that you're happy. I'm fairly happy with that. And then we can do the other one. So select these two polygons and then extrude, extrude, not rotate, up to about here. Then we can extrude out, scale down a bit, go to edge mode and just sort of reshape things a little bit. Maybe something like that. Go back to polygons, extrude out again, and then we'll just match this one in the background just so that there is a little bit of variation in the claws. I think the ends should be a bit smaller just to make them pointier. And then this looks all twisted again, so we'll rotate that and rotate that as well. Yeah, that's okay. Scale that in. Scale that in. Beautiful. So when you do have two vertices selected and you hit scale, it does bring them together. So I use that technique a lot to model in extra details and things. Now let's have a look at the big toe on the side. I want to see where that's lining up. So I'm just going to select these vertices here where it is lining up with on the bottom of the foot, and then I can go to front view. I'm going to middle click to deselect. So B and then middle click to drag and deselect that. So we've got these vertices here. So the question is, where is that in relation to the actual toe? So that's more towards the back. So I might edge slide its back a little bit further. And then edge slide these back a little bit as well. I don't want to press that. So I think I want to bring the bottom one further back, top one a bit more forwards, and just soften that up. Beautiful. Okay. So now we've got a couple of polygons here that we can work from. And this toe seems to sort of come out on the side and go up the side of the foot. So to get that, we're just going to extrude out like this. Comes out quite far. Do a loop cut here. Do a loop cut to get it nice and rounded. So there's enough vertices to get it nice and rounded. And then scale these ones in. Scale these ones in. We can even scale these in a little bit there as well, just to soften it up. Select these two, scale them in, and just get that roundedness going around the whole toe. Now in the front view, we're going to want to bring this midsection up a little bit and in, and then these ones should come in quite far as well. That looks okay. Now we'll want to select the 2 polygons on top, just like that. And then probably rotate forwards so it's pretty much flat. And then extrude up, scale up, rotate again. And that will get us pretty close to where the toe is showing up on here. Now the part where it's coming out is quite rounded, so it's more up at the front and more up at the back, and then down in the middle. I'm not going to worry too much about that. If I had more geometry to work with, I would aim to get a much closer representation of that. For what our purposes are, I'll just bring these vertices down and these vertices up. That will get us fairly close, especially once we start extruding. So if we extrude here, scale, and then extrude down again, so we've got that fairly rounded sort of shape. To make it a bit closer to what we're seeing, I will add in an edge loop here and bring it up. I think even just G and then Z to bring that straight up. Maybe scale out a little bit. And then around the bottom of that structure we've just made, I'll just scale that in a little bit. And that will make that little bulbous part around the claw look a bit more interesting. It's sort of there with the other claws, but not as much. Much more defined with this claw. So we'll select these 2 faces here and extrude out. Yeah, I'll just bring it back a little bit. And I will actually line these back up just with the same sort of, with this middle edge, so that we're working with a flat plane that we're extruding. I'll rotate this quite a bit. It's a very rotating shape. I'll scale these 2 vertices in quite a bit, and that should give us a very close shape to what we're looking for. Extrude, rotate, scale down, rotate a bit more, extrude, rotate, scale down, extrude, scale down, rotate a little bit, scale down more. So we're going to want to add in quite a bit more geometry around this, trying to make it keep fairly consistent with the shape that you're seeing, and make the geometry nice and smooth and not too crazy. I think that's looking okay. Now I think I'll bring back the front part here, because that is no longer in line with what's going on with the claw. And actually the back should probably come back as well. So let's bring all this back, I think. So we've got the actual parts of the claw selected on the inside. I think that's right. G and then Y, and yeah, we can see, I can see that this edge isn't moving, so that's good. We'll check the front as well. So I think the front, so this part is good. So this part should probably come in till it's almost intersecting. So here it's intersecting through, so I'll just come back out a bit, sort of get that pretty close. And do the same on the other side, get that pretty close. It's intersecting a bit along up here, so we'll stop about there. We could spend a lot more time finessing that, but I'm quite happy with that as it is. The claw's a little bit wobbly, but then stuff in nature is never quite perfect. And we zoom out a little bit, that's looking quite deadly, quite good. That's what we're looking for. So I might try, what happens if I scale that in? Yeah, that looks a bit better. Bring that part of the foot in a little bit. Get some of the rest of this to match a bit better. Lovely. So that's the legs. And it's a fairly similar process for the arms. I think I just want to edge slide these forwards a bit. And these forwards a bit, just to even out the density of the polygons a bit more there. Let me bring this back a bit. This back a bit. And then, yeah, so you got like, there's going to be areas where we've got lots of polygons here and barely any under here. We can add in more geometry like this later on, or like this, but then that goes through the whole leg and becomes a whole thing. I find it much easier to work with the model at sort of this level of detail plus a little bit more. This is something we can actually work on the shape of versus just working on the details, which is where sort of the sculpting workflow more comes in. Now, it's quite clear that the neck is very lacking in polygons, so let's add a little bit more to the body and the neck, get the area ready to add in some arms. So I'm just going to add in, I think, just a few edge loops like this. And then, as per my one of my tenets of modeling is every vertex that you create, you need to move. So I'm just going to go through and make sure all of these have been adjusted to actually closer match what we're working on. There's no point in adding them if you're not going to make them work for you. And that doing all that has actually created an area here where it looks like we can actually make an arm happen. So I will start making some of these polygons follow the reference where the arm is coming out, where the shoulder is. There's this big muscle that's sort of happening here that we're not really going to include too closely. Like we could come up here and do all this, and then we need to add in more detail through there. So for the scope of this project, we're not going to do that. But we will create an area where the arm will extrude out. Something like that. And we'll just check along the belly. Coming up into the chest area. Make sure that's looking good. So we're looking at extruding the arm out up here, I think it was. Yeah, arm's coming off up here, so we need to make sure it's sort of transitioning in a bit nicer than what we've currently got happening. And we might want to bring these out on the X. Oh, G and then X. And then when there's a spot where you've had to bring stuff out, you can soften up the sort of next few vertices along. So that's looking a bit better, more of a flat area that we'll be extruding out. We can always reorganize some of these polygons a bit later once we've got more structures in place. So I think we're going to select these two polygons in whatever mode you're most comfortable, and we're going to extrude out, much like we did with the leg. Now we don't need a big chunky thigh muscle. It's looking a bit... Okay, so in orthographic his legs are looking very wide off the body. So I might grab basically the whole bottom of the leg, shift select these. Don't want them, I just want these. Just bringing on the X just a little bit. That's better. That looks like the stance is much more firm in the ground, rather than being too wide apart, having big thick thighs. Okay, so with the shoulder that we're creating, so we want to have a decent amount of geometry, or a decent sized area to work from up here. And then this should be fairly nice and rounded, but also, let's go to the front view, not a big pointy thing coming off there like that. Okay, now that should be rounded. This becomes the point where you ask yourself, do I have enough polygons? Do I want to extrude and then make something circle, which I think we're going to do? Or do I want to make this circular as it is? So I'm going to extrude. And then I'm going to... Let's try it in... Just because I haven't done it before. Let's try So I'll right click with the faces selected and go circle. Yeah, okay, it works on all modes. I tend to just model in vertex mode most of the time, so I don't always try out if tools work in every different mode, but that one's worked quite nicely. So now we want to sort of start to get this into place, and I can see the arm comes down back here a bit and then goes out forwards. So we'll start near the top, try and get the size about correct. It's hard to see with the shading and stuff that's on the reference. It's got a fairly small looking sort of bicep area, so I'm not too worried about making that look too prominent. Let's bring this back in a bit. It's going to need a bit of smoothing out, I think, especially from the front here. Do something like that. There we go. There we go. Okay. So select these two, go back to side view, and then extrude down. And I'll just sort of try and get an angle on the rotation that's fairly close in for the elbow. And then extrude, rotate, and scale down there. So these polygons, or these vertices, need to just be adjusted a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. Now, with the two limbs, it does look like the velociraptor here has two claws. I like to model him with three. So imagine this upper claw being mirrored, I guess, along the hand, and then one big claw coming off down the middle. And we want to keep the flow of the arm sort of coming through into what will be the hand sort of area. There's not much of a hand, I don't think. I'll sort of have a few polygons down to about here, where the middle knuckle comes off, and then the side knuckle comes off as well. And we've still got the 6-pointed circle. I'll scale it down, smidge, about there, that much. And then extrude down for the finger. And extrude down again to about there. And for these fingers, what we will do is model them in nicely and then just duplicate, because that's just a much easier workflow. The toes that are like stuck in against the feet are not as easy to duplicate, and it's nice to have a little bit of difference, which we will get from rotating the fingers around and stuff. So at the end here, it gets quite bulbous, so we'll sort of line that up, add in a bit of extra geometry to scale up, and then a bit of extra geometry to scale down. And then make sure we're sort of following the silhouette as well. And it looks, yeah, that's looking all right. I'm happy with that. Select these and maybe rotate them back a little bit. And then similar to the toes, we'll extrude, scale, extrude back a little bit. We'll add in that edge loop. And then select these two faces. Extrude forwards, just to that exit point, and then extrude out a bit more. And then we can follow the reference for the shape of the claws. These ones will just keep cylindrical. They're more of a pointing, poking claw, I suppose. You can have them how you like in your own design, but for me, I'm going to do a pointy claw. Very good at operating door handles. Okay, so a fairly simple but decent looking finger. Now we'll select all of that. We're in edge mode at the moment, so I want to go to vertex mode just so I can be confident with what I'm doing. So we've got those vertices selected, Shift D to duplicate, and then rotate a bit to sort of match that claw angle. And then I'll let's grab this top set of polygons and just move them just beneath this hand area here, because we'll actually add in one extra loop or so in a moment. And then grab these loops, just sort of rotate them, put them into place, get them to match fairly close with the reference. Doesn't have to be too perfect. Something like that. And this finger is actually like this. There we go. So we want to create a, let's go to the front, and G and X to bring it out to the side. And then I'm going to Shift E to duplicate, and then press Control M, and then X. That's just going to flip it over the X direction, so that we get that sort of curvature that's going to one side to go to the other, and sort of make it follow the shape of what the hand would be a bit nicely. Now, if I wanted to bridge sort of these two together at the moment, obviously there's 6 vertices here and only 4 there. So a quick fix for that is to add in a edge loop there. Get rid of the edges. And I'll try doing the bridge command. Is it Control E? And then bridge edge loops. That's gone very well. Quite happy with where it decided to connect everything up. So we'll delete this edge, and then do the same. Shift left click, and then Control E, bridge edge loops. There we go. Now we could spend some time reconstructing that and making it look pretty, or we can do it the easy way. Go to vertex mode, select all the vertices that are around here, and smooth vertices. And that's got us some fairly decent geometry in place. So it's getting quite skinny where these fingers connect. So I might S and then S and then X. No, S and then Y. There we go. Make that a bit bigger. S and then Y with that one. And maybe just bring these out a bit more. These out a bit as well. Just add a bit of more, I'm trying to get a bit more volume into where the hand is. So it's easier to sort of tweak the smoothed out weirdness, because we do want it to be a bit more concave on here, but not as much on the outside. So yeah, much more easier to edit that than it would be to move what we had in the first place into position. Now I might edge slide this down a bit, and we've lost tracking with the reference, so let's try just bringing that out and rotating that, bringing that up a bit. It's looking a bit spooky, but not too crazy. We just want to bring this knuckle out a bit, or this part of the knuckle out a bit. Yeah, and that smooths out that transition area. That's quite good. Quite happy with that. Just a bit more tweaking, and then we can add in the forearm area, get that muscle in place. Then we've got the bicep, get that looking a bit bigger. Looking quite buff now. We've got the arms, the legs, the feet, the hands, all the claws are in now. Now that was a goal for the video, and I'm pretty happy with where we're at. There's a lot you can decide, for yourself based on how you want your character to look. I just noticed that the top of the cranium's looking a bit shallow. Bring that back up a bit. I did spend a bit of time earlier today with my test project, and I didn't have the brow ridges quite as defined in that one as this, and they both look good, honestly. Looking at this one now, I'm like, it looks different, but it also looks good. So this is part of where you can take your own artistic license and, you know, have things how you want them to be. Maybe have this less defined, maybe not come as many polygons down, and just have it merging further back, or even bringing the brow ridge out across the nose. You know, you can do however you like, really. Whatever you feel like looks good to you and works for your character and all that sort of stuff. As at the end of the day, you know, all human characters can look vastly different and have different features and different proportions. There's no reason why the same rules don't apply with things like velociraptors. Someone might say, oh, that's not the, you know, accurate to the fossil record, but, you know, neither is having polygons. So, you know, just have fun with it. So I think we'll leave it there for today. Like the video if you have enjoyed the process. Subscribe to see more. All patrons on Patreon get access to the final file from each video. That's posted each week. Feel free to jump in the Discord as well if you'd like to chat about Blender or share what you've been working on. Links to everything is in the description. Have fun with your models, stay safe out there, and until next time, I'll see you later. Goodbye!